So let me hand off to Amanda, and she will start her presentation at this time.
Hello, good morning.
Hang on 1 second. 1 second. Okay, you should be good to go. You can share your screen now.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay, so everyone. Okay. Hi, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on this webinar. We're hoping that everyone is staying safe and healthy, and we really appreciate you switching things around from our previous in-person presentation that was supposed to be last Friday to this webinar. So we want to just thank you for making that shift with us. So my name is Amanda Newman. I am an outreach account manager for New Jersey's Clean Energy Program. And with me as well is Tony O'Donnell. He is a regional account manager for New Jersey's Clean Energy Program. And we're going to be talking about our programs, incentives, and we'll have a quick, a few minutes after for Q&As as well. Before I dive deeply into this, I just want to mention what TRC is. Tony and I actually work for a company called TRC, and we are a consulting company who is in contract with the Board of Public Utilities. So everything that we do is New Jersey Clean Energy Program focused. We like to say that TRC just pays our paycheck. So that's why at the end of the presentation, you'll see my email. It says at TRC Companies. Don't want you to get too confused, but that is pays our paycheck, and everything that we do is administering the New Jersey Clean Energy Program.
Okay, Amanda, before you begin, I might ask the other panelists just to mute their lines. We can hear feedback coming through from the other folks' computers, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Sebastian. So the agenda that we're going to go through, I'm going to introduce the Board of Public Utilities and NJCEP, go through some program highlights from the last fiscal year, fiscal year 19, go through the New Jersey Clean Energy Program portfolio of programs, and then talk about ESIP funding later in the presentation. So who is New Jersey's Clean Energy Program? We are administered by New Jersey's Board of Public Utilities, the Division of Clean Energy. The way that this program is able to be around is funding through a societal benefits charge on the utility bill. So if you are a utility customer and pay a utility bill in the state of New Jersey, you pay into this program. And it's a very small amount on the utility bill each month, but with that racking up from every person that pays a utility bill in the state, quite a large fund. So our program goals are to educate people about these programs and tell them that they're for you to receive incentives on energy efficient projects, change behavior to create a more sustainable community, provide opportunity for all New Jersey residents to reduce energy and lower operating costs, protect the environment and lower emissions, which is something that I'm very much aligned with, and I'm sure the folks at NJHEPS, you are as well, and meet the governor's goal of 100% clean energy by the year 2050. So this is also just a way that we meet our goals by customer education, energy conservation, energy efficiency, distributed energy resources, and renewable energy. So we wear many hats at the New Jersey Clean Energy Program. Now I'm going to go over some program highlights from the last fiscal year. In the last fiscal year, which happens July 1st to June 30th, there were over 131,000 applications processed in the last fiscal year. And energy savings are delivered through electric, gas, oil, and other efficiencies and generation. And then in the last fiscal year, we provided over $136 million of NJCEP incentives for people to do energy efficient projects. And this was just in the last fiscal year alone. And we bring real world results. So the clean energy programs eliminate CO2 enough to equate to over 96,000 cars removed off the roads, over 7 million street trees planted, and over 400,000 metric tons of greenhouse gases eliminated. So now I'm just gonna go over the umbrella of programs that we provide. So I'm gonna touch on renewable energy and touch on the SREC registration program and community solar. Specialized energy efficiency. So I'm gonna dive into community energy plan grants a little bit more. Commercial and industrial and distributed energy resources. This is what I'm gonna focus on mainly. This is mainly what this presentation is about. And then just so you know, we also do have residential programs for new construction, existing homes, and energy efficient products such as washers, dryers, refrigerators, etc. Now I'm going to touch on renewable energy and our solar registration program and the SREC program. So when solar is installed, the customer registers the system to receive solar renewable energy certificates, so SRECs, that they can then sell and get funds for as the system produces energy. Right now, the SREC program is not taking any applications in the state of New Jersey, and the program will turn into the TREC program, so the transition REC program, when the New Jersey electric market hits 5.1%. Solar, so that the TRECs are not yet available, but they are coming. And we know that Sebastian is going to be talking about TRECs. So if anyone has specific questions around the TREC program on a BPU level in the state of New Jersey, Sebastian's probably a great resource. I can also connect you to the person at the Board of Public Utilities who is dealing with this program. We're not entirely sure when it's going to come out. But nonetheless, I'm more than happy to send out a mass email once we know more information around this program. So diving into a bit of community solar. So what is community solar? It's a larger remotely located solar array or facility that is virtually divided among multiple participants known as subscribers by means of credit on their utility bill. So really, what does that mean? So a way that somebody can take advantage of solar without actually having a solar array on their building or on their facility. So what the person can do is buy a solar subscription into a community solar project that then runs into the solar, that delivers into the solar grid. And then those SRECs that you get from the solar then go into your electric bill. So you're actually getting the generation of solar without actually having it on your property. So this might be a great deal for facilities like yourselves who are big universities who might have capacity for solar. Or if you don't, this could be a great way for you to buy into someone else's solar that's in your utility grid. Nonetheless, the Board of Public Utilities has closed the application process for community solar. So because we had such a great influx of participants who wanted to take advantage of this program, but as of right now, the application is closed. Nonetheless, if you are interested in community solar, I can send you some information as well as connect you with someone at the BPU if this is something you're very much interested in. So the way that you can be in line with community solar is you can be a subscriber. So an individual entities who get solar power. You can be a developer, a host site. So you could be the location that actually has the solar array on your property. The utility, the electricity provider where solar projects are installed, and the installer, the person that actually installs the solar project. And you can also participate as an owner buying a share or portion of the community solar project or the panels, or you can be a subscriber, so buying a portion or share of the electric output produced by the community solar. So a lot of people in more urban communities will be a subscriber with a community solar project. I'm going to touch on community energy plans. So this is a really wonderful program because it involves your entire community. So as facility managers, as higher education workers, you can really dive deeply into working with your community together and really create that for yourself. So what is a community energy plan? It's creating a plan around sustainability, around energy use, around transportation, water management, land use and waste management, and coming up with a concrete way on how to become more sustainable and to save energy and to help the environment as a community. So you create a task force. So a task force might look like residents who just work 9 to 5s. It could be green team members. It could be facility managers of universities or of schools. It can be teachers, police officers, etc. So it's a really great way for residents and businesses and governments to work together in creating this plan to then receive a grant from the Board of Public Utilities on how to do this for your particular community. And this is just a really great graphic to show what is available, what you can think of to do. Sorry about that. What you can do as a community to really put together a sustainable plan for yourselves. And now I'm going to dive deeply into the commercial and industrial portfolio of programs. So commercial and industrial are the branch of programs that affects higher education. So you will be obviously not residents, but as individuals, you can do residential programs. Nonetheless, your facilities are going to be under this portfolio. So I'm going to dive into measurements and audits, comprehensive programs, single measure rebate programs, and distributed energy resources. Before I dive into measurement and audits, I want to touch on one really important thing about the new fiscal year 20 changes. So as of July 1st of 2019, there are enhanced incentives available for projects that are in urban enterprise zones, opportunity zones, owned or operated by a local government, so a county or municipality. So county colleges, this would be great for you. And then owned or operated by a K through 12 public school. So anywhere if you are a project in one of these zones, you are automatically applicable for enhanced incentives. So where can you find that you are in an enhanced incentive zone? So if you're not owned or operated by a local government, so if you're not a county college and you're a state college and you want to find out if you are applicable for these enhanced incentives, you can go onto our website, click on enhanced incentive rebates, and then you'll put your address into the community asset map. This will show you if you are in one of those urban enterprise or opportunity zones. And I'm more than happy after the presentation to send out a link to anyone who's interested if you want to see if your facility is in one of those UEZs and OZs. And there might even be a situation where some of your buildings are and some of your buildings aren't, depending on how big your campus is and depending on where it's located, etc. So I'm going to go through the measurements and audits and talk about benchmarking. Benchmarking is for commercial, industrial, government, 501c3 nonprofits, and institutional entities. This is a free program to take advantage of. So it's you set up an account with Energy Star Portfolio Manager. You put in, I believe, 12 months of utility data. And what the system does, it compares your building to other similar buildings nationally. And it provides you suggestions for improving operations and maintenance. So what this means is that you put your utility data into this tool, it calculates for you where you are, using a lot of energy, where you're seeing peaks, where you're seeing plateaus. And you can then decide from the suggestions that the portfolio provides you what energy efficient programs you are applicable for. And there's also personalized incentive program eligibility and follow-up. So that's usually me who follow-ups with the folks who go through benchmarking. And this, again, is completely free. So if you're just curious about where you think, or you're interested in a project and you want to see where you're using a lot of energy, this is a completely free way to do that. These are just some, energy consumption and cost reports that are in the benchmarking program, or the benchmarking reports. So it gives you a score between 1 and 100. So just like, you're in college and you're taking a test, it gives you a score between 1 and 100. And then you can see where you are. As you can see, the score here is 46. It shows you the amount of electricity and gas that's used. And then it shows you a graph of where you're using a lot of energy. And also it provides you the programs that are applicable for this facility. So moving on to our local government energy audit. This is for local governments, New Jersey colleges and universities. So if you are a state university, you are applicable for this program. And 501c3 nonprofit buildings with an average yearly demand of over 200 kW. This is a free ASHRAE Level 2 audit. So an auditor will come into the facility, do an inventory of all energy consuming equipment, and line by line program eligibility, savings, and costs. So it's a comprehensive utility bill analysis. So on your end, you would have to put into the application 14 months worth of utility data. And then once that is approved and completed, the auditor will come into the facility and they'll do the audit. There is benchmarking in this audit as well, so you can see where you're using a lot of your energy. And the audit also provides a spec of if there's feasibility for solar or combined heat and power, which I'll talk a little bit more in depth later in the presentation. And then as you can see, there are the incentive caps at the bottom here. So just quickly, so the auditor, so you'll gather the preliminary data of all the energy bills. There's the facility inspection. You'll evaluate renewable / distributed energy measures and identify and evaluate energy conservation measures. And then there's the energy audit report. The really great thing about LGEA is that once the report is finalized, the auditor, the case manager that you worked with, getting all of that utility data collected, myself or Tony or another account manager, we come to your facility, unless you don't want us to, as in now we wouldn't do that, but usually we come to the facility and we sit down with you and your staff and we go through the entire report and our findings. We answer any questions that you have. And this is a really great way to get an idea of what the findings were, but also if you don't know where to start, if you have absolutely no idea where to start with your energy efficiency project, an LGEA is a really wonderful way for you to get a lot of clarity around what was found, what you can do, the incentives that are available. And then we also go over the programs. So what programs is the facility eligible for? And now I'm going to dive into the comprehensive programs that the commercial and industrial side utilizes. So large energy users, this is for large commercial and industrial entities who have paid a minimum of $200,000 in NJCEP funds in the previous 12 months. This can be a little bit confusing. So what I like to tell people, if you have paid overall in your societal benefits charge at least $5 million, then you can apply for this program. So this is for huge facilities that are constantly using energy. So the $200,000 in NJCEP funds is only the funds of the societal benefits charge that's going into specifically the NJCEP funds. So the average peak demand of all the facilities is over 400 kW, and it encourages large commercial and industrial utility customers to self-invest in energy efficiency, combined heat and power, and fuel cell projects. So this, again, as you can see, the incentive cap is $4 million or the lesser of. So as you can see, there's a lot of gain from being in this program. Nonetheless, you have to spend a lot of money on the SBC charge. So $5 million. If you haven't spent $5 million, then you cannot partake in this program. And honestly, we get about, I think last year, the program manager told me we had maybe 40 or so participants in this program. We don't get a lot because you have to be a very large entity. The way that the program works, so you enroll in the program, you have the submission and approval of the application, and then you come up with an energy efficiency plan, and you do that with a contractor. And then once that energy efficiency plan draft is submitted, that's when you're committed of your incentives. Once the confirmation of installation happens, that's when your incentives are paid. This might not be very applicable to you as universities, but this is one of the case studies that we do have, just so you can see numbers wise that the total project for having HVAC controls updated in a pharmaceutical facility was over $400,000. The incentive was over $300,000. As you can see, they're saving over $100,000, and the payback period is a little bit over a year. So our pay for performance program, this is probably a little bit more applicable to you as higher education facilities. This is for large commercial and industrial existing buildings or new construction seeking 2 or more energy efficiency measures with a minimum of 15% savings. So this is for larger facilities, not as large as large energy users. So the annual peak demand is over 200 kW in the previous year for existing buildings. And if you're a new construction project, the building has to be 50,000 square feet. One really great thing about the pay for performance is that you can do prescriptive measures and custom measures. You can play a little bit more with what you want to do with this project. It's a little bit more comprehensive, so that's why it's lucrative. And we also provide you a list of pre-approved participating partners that will streamline the program and guide users through the program phases. So you work with somebody who is keen in the pay for performance program to help guide you through this process. The incentive cap is 50% of the project cost, or 80% for if you're in one of those enhanced zones. And there are 3 incentive payables in this program. So incentive payments 2 and 3 are doubled for projects that are in OZs and UEZs. So the way that this works, it looks a little bit similar to large energy users. It has its differences. So there is the program enrollment that needs to be submitted and approved. And then you come up with your energy reduction plan. You will work with your participating partner with this, on this plan. So once that's developed and approved, the first incentive is paid, and that's a fixed cost based on square footage of the facility. And then you move on to the installation of measures and then the installation verification report. As you can see, once we see that everything is, getting installed and everything's installed, you receive your second incentive. Like I mentioned, if you are in one of those enhanced zones, it's up to 40%. If you're not, it's up to 25% of the project cost. And then, as you see, there's a gap 1 year between the installation verification report and the verification of savings. As you can see, that's a year. So pay for performance, we literally pay you for your performance. That's why it's called this. So we see if you have met your metrics of saving at least 15% of the energy savings that you said you were going to do in the energy reduction plan. So then after that year, once we come in and see that you have saved at least 15%, you receive your third incentive. Again, it's enhanced for facilities in urban enterprise zones or opportunity zones. One thing I do want to mention with pay for performance, this program is very lucrative with its incentives. Nonetheless, it does take up to 2 to 3 years to go through one of these projects. So that's something definitely to keep in mind with some of your facilities. And also, how do you use those facilities as well? Is it open during the summer, or is it closed? Is there summer school? Is it half a day or full days? So you really want to take all of that into account when you're coming up with your energy reduction plan. And then so the contractor can help you with it in terms of saving the amount of energy that you need to save for this incentive. So this is a case study or a success story of an apartment complex. I chose this one because I thought of dorms. So if you have dorm buildings, those are multifamily properties that can go through pay for performance. So this was an existing building to do lighting upgrades, boiler replacement, double pane windows, HVAC controls, air seals, and attic insulation. You can see that the project cost was over $1 million. The paid incentive was over $300,000. Annual savings over $200,000, and the payback period was a little bit more than 5 years. So these buildings have been there for many, many years. A lot of colleges and universities, some of them have been here since the early 1920s. I know my college was. So it's a great thing to just keep in mind, how long are these facilities going to last after you do the project? Probably a long time. Direct install is also a comprehensive program, and this is for small to medium-sized commercial and industrial existing facilities seeking to replace inefficient equipment. So this is for smaller facilities, so not like a P4P project. The average annual peak demand is less than 200 kW in the previous 12 months. So again, for smaller buildings, so depending on if you have maybe a little restaurant on campus or something like that, that could be something that's applicable for this program. So a pre-approved regional participating contractor will do a walkthrough and evaluation and guide the users through the program phases. So we have regional participating contractors around the state of New Jersey. So whatever territory you're in, you get that participating contractor, and they work with you through these program phases. And this is a turnkey process with a fast project turnaround time. This project can take no more usually than 6 months. So this is a very fast turnaround time. It's one of our most successful programs. Mom and pop shops love it. So if you have smaller buildings on campus, this is something to keep in mind when you want to reinstall efficient equipment to lower your energy usage. The incentive cap is $125,000 funding per project / building. So each building is up to $125K, and $250K in one of those enhanced zones. Per entity, it's $250,000. And then in those enhanced zones, it's up to $4 million. We haven't seen that per entity yet with direct install. Nonetheless, maybe it can happen. Usually we haven't seen anything more so than 400,000 or so. So one of the reasons the direct install program is so lucrative is because even without the enhanced incentives, you can still receive up to 70% of the project costs covered. So then you, as a facility, only need to, shell out 30%. If you are in one of those zones, it's up to 80% of the project costs covered. So that's one of the reasons why this is such a great program, is because you receive such high value for it. So as a facility manager or somebody who works with all the nuances in the facilities, just keep in mind that you can really get bang for your buck with this program. So the Plainsboro Library did a direct install program. They upgraded their LED lighting and occupancy sensors, low flow aerators, gas-fired boilers, premium motors. The project cost was over $100,000. The incentive was $57,000. They're saving over $11,000, and the payback period is a little over 5 years. Again, think about how long that library was there before the upgrades, and you can think about some of the libraries on your campus. Think about what that would look like, and in terms of direct install, you can receive a really high value of the project costs covered. The Customer Tailored Energy Efficiency Pilot Program. I'm going to talk about the Smart Start program after this, but this is for commercial and industrial customers seeking a streamlined application for participating in this program for multiple technology types. So what that means is if you want to replace your boiler, if you want to replace some lighting, if you want a custom piece of equipment that's not on our prescriptive list, this might be a program for you because it streamlines the application process. You only have to fill out one application per piece of equipment. There's on-site assistance available with this program, so a program manager will actually come to the facility and do a scoping session with you to get clear on what you want to do with the project. And just you can ask questions and vice versa. Just get really clear on what you want to do. The one application form for multiple prescriptive and custom measures, like I mentioned. So if you want to do multiple measures of different kinds, you can do that through this program. It utilizes Smart Start incentives. Smart Start incentives we like to say they're our most conservative incentives. So just keep that in mind as well when going through this program. It utilizes the same as Smart Start, which I'll talk about in a couple of minutes. And there's additional technical assistance available. So that technical assistance is up to $10,000. So if you have in mind some sort of custom technology that you want to go over with a designer or an architect or something like that, that availability is applicable, and you can take advantage of that incentive to do so. This is how you would get paid with Customer Tailor. As you can see, the technical assistance, it shifts the way that you receive your incentive. For prescriptive measures, it's just 100%. You get your incentive as the installation is complete. And then with custom measures, you can see that it's 90 and 10, the 10 being making sure that it works. So it's the performance verification. So a university in New Jersey went through the CTIP program for various buildings, and they did it for their lighting and lighting control. So this was a prescriptive application they did. So you can see that it's almost $700 of the project cost. The committed incentive was 121. The annual savings is 104, and the project payback is a little less than 5 years. Now I'm going to go into single measure rebates. So this is the Smart Start program that I was talking about with CTIP. This is for all commercial and industrial, government, nonprofit, and institutional customers. The really great thing with Smart Start is that this is, you can take it on your timeline. There is no timeline for this minus the 1-year application that you need to send in within the year of purchasing the equipment. Other than that, this is when, this is on your time to replace inefficient equipment. So it's for individual high efficiency equipment rebates for new construction, renovation, remodeling, and equipment replacement. So there's also a lot of variables that you can use the Smart Start program with. It's one of the most flexible programs. This also has incentives for prescriptive and custom design measures. And in the last fiscal year, you needed pre-approval for all lighting. In this fiscal year, pre-approval is only now required if the incentive is $100,000 for lighting or higher, and you still need to get pre-approval for all custom measures. The incentive cap for prescriptive is $500,000 for each electric or gas account, and then the custom is the lesser of the following below. And I'm sure this will circulate around, and we'll be able to send this PowerPoint to you, so that's not a problem if you're interested in getting very clear on the incentives. Here is a list of some prescriptive and custom incentives. For the enhanced incentives, that only is applicable to the prescriptive incentives, so the prescriptive equipment. So if you are in one of those OEZs or UEZs or other enhanced zones, then you can qualify for double the rebate when dealing with prescriptive equipment. And then for custom incentives, it's newer, innovative technologies proven to be cost effective and not listed as prescriptive. So if you see something or you know of something that's not on the prescriptive list, you can try to work it out and get it to be a custom measure, and you do need pre-approval for that. So Ocean County College went through our Smart Start program with their lighting upgrades and exterior LED wall packs. The total project cost was a bit over $7,000. Their incentive was $6,000. Their annual savings is over $6,000, and the project payback was 3 months. So you can actually get a lot of savings from just lighting. And now moving on to distributed energy resources. So combined heat and power and fuel cells. So this is for commercial and industrial customers that require on-site electric generation that do or do not utilize waste heat. So this is for facilities that are constantly running. The projects must pass a cost effectiveness test and run 5,000 full load equivalent hours per year. So for example, if you have a generator that's running, there might be a lot of waste heat that's coming off of that and just going into the atmosphere, and it's not doing anything. What CHP does, it can capture that waste heat and put it back into the facility. So for example, it can heat your water, for example. And so you don't have to be spending as much money on water because that generation is already happening with this piece of technology. So there's resiliency with return on investment. There's technology neutral incentives, and fuel cells with or without heat recovery. So fuel cells are essentially like a battery, and you can utilize this battery in your facility where it doesn't need to be recharged. And if you have very specific questions, Tony and I will answer them to the best of our abilities. If anything, I can always take your questions back to the engineers who work solely on this program. This is a very engineer-based program. This is a chart just kind of showing you how the CHP program works. And this is also the eligibility for funds with the CHP program. So acute care management services, some universities have medical facilities on their campuses. So they utilize CHP. The total project estimated cost was around $2 million. The incentive was almost $700,000. The estimated annual savings, for the first year was over $600,000, and the average annual cost savings were almost $700,000. And the payback period was a little less than 2 years. And mind you, all of these case studies, most of these case studies that I'm showing you are not from this fiscal year. So the enhanced incentives are not added if these were in OZs, UEZs, owned or operated by a local government. So microgrids. So the Board of Public Utilities is working on a microgrid program. So when something like Superstorm Sandy ever happens, if or when it ever happens, there will be a way for hospitals and police stations and fire stations, really important facilities to be able to stay open and continue their services for the public. So these are critical facilities that are connected to a single or series of technologies that can operate while isolated and islanded from main grid due to power outages. So if there's ever a power outage, these facilities would still be able to run full functioning, being connected to a microgrid. And the Board of Public Utilities is still in their planning stages with this program. energy storage as well. They're still in their planning stages with energy storage, but this is to provide resiliency to communities and be able to if something like Superstorm Sandy happens, we'll be able to connect a battery essentially to the energy usage throughout multiple facilities. And this, the final report was accepted by the board in June 2019, so we are still waiting on the straw proposal. It's being developed as we speak. This is just for you to be aware that there are electric vehicle incentives if you have a fleet for local. So let me preview that. So this is designed to encourage local governments to add electric vehicles to their fleet. So if your college if you are a county college and you do have a fleet, there is grant money available for you to invest in EVs. And if you have very specific questions around this, this is the email address that you should use to ask the person at the Board of Public Utilities any sort of questions around EVs. And the last thing I'm going to be talking, sorry about that. The last thing I'm going to be talking about is financing for government agencies. SIP a little while ago. This is the Energy Savings Improvement Program. So this provides alternative financing for energy savings projects at public institutions. So this is directly administered by the Board of Public Utilities. So what this is that it's a loan that will take usually multiple buildings. I know Newark Public Schools right now is going through an ESIP where they're taking 60 something of their schools and putting it into this one giant project. So the great thing about an ESIP as a local government is that, or K through 12 public school system, is that you're able to take a bucket and put whatever you want into this bucket. And that's the really great thing because, for example, we don't give incentives on windows. So if you want to redo your windows, you would be able to utilize that piece of the project in an ESIP project. As this requires no new bonding and is outside of the capital budget and does not count as debt or require voter approval, which a lot of schools love, that they don't need to go out for voter approval on an ESIP project. And also it's a financing mechanism. So the way this works is you have to go through a local government energy audit. And then once you go through the audit, you have to select a path. And what that means is that you can work solely with an energy savings company to go through your ESIP with you. You can do it yourself, hire whatever architect or contractor that you want to hire to do this giant project. Or you can do a combination of both. So you can work with an ESCO as well as work with your architect, work with your engineer, work with your contractor that you know and trust to make sure that you're getting the most bang for your buck. And this is a 15-year loan. So all of the energy savings that you are developing through this project go right back into paying the loan. So there's the investment grade energy audit, and then the energy savings plan is developed and approved. So this plan includes the use of our programs and incentives. So once you go through all of this, then you can see what buildings are applicable for what programs. And the local government energy audit is really great in spelling out which of those programs are available to you in your ESIP project. And for more information, you can please feel free to go onto our Clean Energy Learning Center. There's a few videos on there and just some information for you as what energy efficiency is. I'm more than happy to send out my the website and my email if you have questions. And please feel free to take advantage of the Learning Center. This is the website. And this is my information. There's also newsletters and listservs, So if you're interested in receiving up-to-date information, when it comes out, please, utilize these because there's things changing constantly with the BPU. We're coming up to the end of our fiscal year, so there will be some program changes. So it's beneficial for you as facility managers or facility maintenance, or even professors or students even, to just know what is available, what's changing, and to just be informed. And thank you very much. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Amanda. That was fabulous. Really a good resource. Folks, we will make the PowerPoint available to everyone as a PDF, and that'll happen indirectly offline once we're done. We have 27 participants currently. There were a couple of questions, Amanda, that did not get into the question box. One, I'm not sure if it was a question. Mark Ushak said, in order to benchmark, schools have to be transparent with energy bills. Is that a question mark? I think we should. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so, and they can type in if I'm answering the question, but the word transparent, it has to be 12 consecutive months of utility data for the benchmarking. So you need 12 consecutive months of utility data to put into that Energy Star Portfolio Manager tool to then get the results of your score through the benchmarking. I hope that answers your question.
And thank you. And then from Adeline Cochran, there's a question, I think if I'm understanding it correctly, is when you do a local government energy audit, for how long is that audit considered valid?
So do you mean from the time your application is accepted to the amount of time afterwards that you have to go through the audit?
Maybe.
Well, usually it takes at least 2 or 3 months after, and Tony, you can jump in if you know a little bit more. But to my understanding, it takes a couple of months for the audit to actually begin once the application is submitted and approved. And that's because we have other projects in our pipeline. And depending on how much of workload that the LGA team has and how many exit or how many audits they have scheduled, that time between the application being approved and the audit can differ. So for a very slow time, for example, it could be like 2 months or 3 months, and then at a very like filled pipeline, it could be 4 months or 5 months. So that kind of depends. So even with the application being approved and the audit, there's still a few months at least for you to, there's a little bit of a gap, if that answers your question. And then after that, I'm not entirely sure. Tony, do you know how long it is that?
Yes. Generally, well, there's a couple parts of the audit. One is what Amanda talked about, taking the bills and benchmarking them against other facilities. That probably is not going to change over a year or a couple of years. Mm-hmm. What may change, so if you have an LGA that was 3 years ago, that baseline is probably, you could still act on that baseline. What does change more often is so part of it is assessing the energy efficiency of your buildings, and the other is recommending energy conservation measures and identifying incentive programs in the clean energy program. Those things change often, and your buildings will change, right? We generally say if your LGE is than 5 years old, it's probably time to consider getting a new one, because there may be changes in the technology for boilers or air conditioners or something. Once you get past 5 years, it's a good idea to get it refreshed.
Yeah, thanks, Tony.
Good, thank you. That was most helpful. So, Tony, do you have a presentation as well, or is that the sum total of the clean energy program?
Yeah, no, I was just here to provide support, and since Amanda did a tremendous job, I could not have done better. And, I'm out in the field as an outreach account manager, and uh, I was interested to hear what some of the attendees, the questions that they have. So I'm available for questions and answers, but that's all that we have.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you. That's most
Yeah.
useful.
Yeah, thank you.
We'll have a question and answer period at the end as well. So if folks are still thinking about it, go ahead and think about it. Put it in the question and answer section at the bottom of the chat window. And Sebastian, do you want to take it away next?
Okay, so I'm just going to stop sharing.
I'll do that.
Oh, you do that. Okay, cool.
Sure. Works for me. Funny.
Yep. Okay. So it should be, Sebastian, you should be on now. You should be able to share your screen.
Okay, let me know if it comes through. You guys see it?
Yep.
Okay.
Maximize.
Looks good, guys?
Yep. Very good.
All right, very good. Well, thank you everybody for joining. First and foremost, like Amanda said, and by the way, tremendous job going comprehensively over all of the programs in the States. But first and foremost, I hope everyone is faring well. Pretty trying times for everybody, and seems to maybe get worse before it gets better. So hang in there, everybody. So with Amanda's presentation in mind, just to put it in context, about a quarter of the country that I represent for NextEra in the distributed generation category, roughly 40 megawatts of installation and under. And in that quarter of a country, New Jersey is by far the most progressive when it comes to energy measures, that it's taking progression towards clean energy and providing subsidies in place that you guys can avail yourselves of either directly or through third parties that significantly reduce your cost of energy. Believe me, some of the other states have measures in place that in certain cases are 180 degrees the opposite of what you're seeing out of the progressive states. So we're lucky to live in the state that we do. I will focus exclusively on the imminent opportunity under the Transition Rec program that Amanda mentioned. I will note, and we'll cover this in the sort of about NextEra, what's called the marketing session, that we are the world's largest renewable energy developer. So while distributed generation solar is a piece of our business, we do everything from power trading and wholesale participation in large universal scale, 200-300 megawatt solar systems, wind systems. And then beyond that, we partner on CHPs, EVs, storage, microgrids, anything you can think of under the energy umbrella. We're sort of a one-stop shop as a third-party financier and long-term owner. Allow me to jump into the so back in December, the BPU adopted this, what we'll just call the TREC program, Transition Renewable Energy Program. I'm sure you guys have all been hit over the head for maybe a decade or so now about on-site solar in New Jersey. There's always been a pretty lucrative subsidy market. The big difference between what has occurred and what is occurring with the TREC program is the incentive compensation nature. So in the past, it was similar terms of 10 to 15 years. The only thing is it was floating, which for a company like ours, which is super conservative, we're a Fortune 200 company, hardly take any risks. I'll get into sort of our fabric a little bit more later. That means a ton that we no longer have the unknown of what that incentive market will look like going forward. So there always was variability. That may not mean as much to other developers because we are walking on a dollar for dollar basis into a lower regime in terms of incentives. So right now, the spot market, the current market, is trading somewhere in a range of $200 to $250 per megawatt hour. This new incentive that came out is $152 for every megawatt hour of generation. Again, the big benefit to us is that it's fixed revenue. Fixed revenue lends itself to our ability to go out and eventually maybe get bank financing. And from a credit rating standpoint, everyone sees fixed revenue as obviously far less risky than something that is an unknown. The other piece that the BPU has made clear, not only in this piece of regulation, excuse me. But well, frankly, for the last year, two, maybe longer, is they want to see development on certain types of sites. So I highlighted in this table the sites that I think are most applicable, although we can probably pretty quickly zero in on the three lower categories, because I imagine most of you on this call are not sitting on a landfill or brownfield, though you may be sitting on areas of historic fill. So that first category, just to quickly go through that, means we can connect, so sell the power to ACE or JCP&L and PSEG, and we would pay you a pretty lucrative lease just to put solar on that site. So it's not consumed on site and it's not consumed by you all. The second category and the last category, both that start net metered, is non-residential rooftop, carport, and ground mount. So these factors, basically you just apply the 1 times to 152. So we get 152 for any rooftop, 152 per megawatt hour for any rooftop or carport, and then 0.6 of that, so 60% of that for any ground mounts. That's the incentive that we as the developer would monetize. And what that means for you all, how this translates into PPA rates, frankly, pretty simple. And some of you may have seen this already. We've communicated with, I don't know, probably something like 2,500 customers in the state of New Jersey over the last couple of months, especially if you're on rooftop land in that category of, let's call it 100,000 square feet, maybe 75,000 square feet or larger, and have on-site load. The PPA prices that we are offering are $0, $1. That means per megawatt hour, so that's pennies, right? Sometimes it'll be a penny and a half, maybe two, depending if it's a really bad site. But for the most part, the overwhelming majority has been in that category of 1 penny per kilowatt hour or lower on down to $0. And it's for a 15-year period. That is with NextEra removing the project at the end and returning the piece of property back to where it is. And I think for most of you all, you're probably looking at energy cost in that sort of 8, 9, 10, 11 cent range, and an avoided cost on solar of 7, 8, 9 cents. So obviously it's pretty attractive. We amend the 5.1% milestone. So this program goes into effect when the 5.1% milestone is attained. So what do you need to do in advance of that? All you need to do is submit an SREC registration package. That's SREC registration package has an LOI between what would be the developer, us, and you all, college and university audience. A few pieces of LOI equivalents with our engineering part designs. That would, sorry about that, like I jumped back. That's all that's needed to submit. And as long as you do that, not by when 5.1% is met, but actually by the time the successor program is adopted, that's when, if you do that before the successor program is adopted, then you lock in this incentive. So the 5.1% will hit sometime, now we think, according to the BPU, in the May-June period. We had heard rumors that the successor would be adopted as early as July. So that's the real timeline that you need to be mindful of, the successor program. But in light of everything that's going on and the fact that that might have been an aggressive timeline to begin with, I'm not sure that that rumor is necessarily gonna hold up. So it might go down a few months after that. So maybe September, October. So again, the key takeaway here is make sure you're in a position that if you're interested in this, you speak to hopefully us, but you're a developer of choice, and you're in a position where that developer has submitted that package before the successor program is announced. So when we think about the generation, we have basically the two types of generation, both of which Amanda touched on. If you have the on-site consumption, that this directly translates into getting a PPA price from a third party developer like us, and then entering into a PPA contract with them for long-term power provision. And the other alternative is if you do have land, namely rooftops and carports, because again, going back to the ground mounts not only receive a lower factor, but in the context of community solar are not preferred sites. They've made it very clear through a scoring mechanism that if you submit ground mounts, they being the BPU, that is not going to be looked favorably upon, and you'll be dinged in the land scoring category. So those who have rooftops and carports will score better. It's a very competitive process. Amanda mentioned that year one of the program was shut down. For 77 megawatts, the BPU received something like 650 megawatts of applications. Again, a lot of those were in that ground mount category. So as long as you're in the rooftop and car area or category, you should be in good shape and have a good chance. The other important piece of this is when you're submitting into this program, make a jump on the community engagement, which we always try to do. But it's very important that the county knows, the mayor knows, that the housing authorities know, that everyone understands that the whole point of putting in this solar array, this community solar array, is so that the residents of the community, in principle, will realize a fixed savings percent. Typically, you'll see about 10% of those fixed savings to their utility bills. So sort of a no lose, you go green, and you're locking in a fixed incentive program cost. Now, I will say that participation in the program as an end user is a little bit more challenging. It's doable, but because the program is built really with residential subscribers in mind who have much higher rates than you all do, if you participate in the program as well as lease the land, it's sort of, think of it as in one hand, out the other. Because if you participate as an anchor subscriber, which we're fine with, instead of earning, let's say, 13 cents from the residential subscriber, we're earning 8 cents for every kilowatt hour from the college and university crowd. And that would just reduce the lease payment. So generally speaking, our customers in New Jersey who are in the commercial and industrial class, which is comparable to the university and college crowd, they're just looking at it strictly from a land lease play and to maximize that land. Again, this is in the context where there isn't on-site solar to support behind the meter usage. So our experience in this program, we have over 40 installations throughout the state, over 50 megawatts. They range in size from very small installations all the way up to 10 megawatts AC. So we've gone through this process about 41 times specific. There were a couple of times at the beginning where we made mistakes, learned from our mistakes when submitting that SREC application. Make sure that working with someone, they understand everything that needs to be done, because complete means complete. If you submit something and you think it's complete and the successor program is adopted, and then you hear back from the BPU after it's adopted that in fact you missed this or that, that it's too late at that point. That means your SREC registration application is not complete. That is pretty much the overview of the my presentation is not going to be as comprehensive since we're just focused on the TREC program, where it won't be as long as Amanda's. So I will just hop into just a few slides to breeze through who we are and why, especially in times like this, it may be worth considering partnering with third parties, but third parties who hopefully are well funded. We currently have, and this is current, even in light of everyone's market caps falling materially over the last couple of weeks, $101 billion market cap. And again, we're the world's largest generator of wind and solar energy. And we are fragmented into two different companies. So we have our utility business, which is the regulated side of the house, and the unregulated side of the house, which is where I sit. About 60% of our business falls into the utility category and 40% falls into the unregulated side. We're a Fortune 200 company, and we've been in business through our utility side for about 90 years. Having the utility business in place, I normally don't spend much time talking about this because it doesn't apply to the unregulated side, which any installation would fall under, but is turning out to be, always ends up being very critical during downturns. During the recession period, it happened. We saw it play out well, and we're seeing it play out well now. While we're all suffering, we're suffering a bit less, right? And it's because the utility business is sort of the last bill to go down. So from a credit perspective, our access to debt, our access to liquid cash ends up being materially higher. Right now, we're in a position where we have access to about 6 billion of liquid cash equivalent. So why that? I'll get to you in 2 more slides, but we touched on this already. I don't mean to belabor how much experience we have. As Wani said, this will be made available to you all. And the one thing I'd add here is 2 elements on the procurement side. On the procurement side, when we go out to market, we go out to market with our sister sort of group within our unregulated side. That's the group that goes out and buys that builds 200, 300, 400 megawatts of solar installations throughout the country. So our distributed energy group, which might do 2 megawatts, a megawatt, 5 megawatts, 20 megawatts, will piggyback off of their orders. So from a purchasing power standpoint, there's a huge benefit having that group out there and working alongside them. The other important piece is, although this seems to be quickly changing because of COVID, we went out last year and spent several $1 billion safe harboring our pipeline, which means that we procured enough equipment to lock in a 30% investment tax credit, which drops year over year. This year is 26, next year is 22. After it's 10%. We locked that in last year at 30%. I say it may change because of COVID, because there are different industry groups right now, in fact, as we speak, that are lobbying to help extend the 30% or go back to a 30%. So right now it's a significant advantage for us. We'll see how that plays out afterwards, but it won't be a disadvantage. This is our distributed generation group. So again, we're broken up into the large group and the small group. This is focused on the small group that I'm a part of. We're in that 500 to 600 megawatt category. We've got projects in 22 states, including New Jersey. We built on all size levels. And we internally, 2 things to take away here. We internally monetize all of our tax attributes. What that means is a lot of our competitors in the industry will typically show up to transactions with 3 partners on the financing side. That would be the developer or us, debt, bank, and tax equity. The tax equity partner will come in and monetize the investment tax credit, depreciation, will pick up a little bit of cash flow too. That means in normal times, you have 3 parties at the table, which I'm sure whenever you guys deal with multiple parties at the negotiation table, it just adds an element of uncertainty on the execution side. In times like this, it adds very significant execution risk, because where that person who is the tax partner's ultimate liability lands is frankly completely unknown now this year. It's the first time I can ever remember prognostications of negative earnings growth, right? So you might have been a retailer who expected revenue of $50 million and the commensurate tax bill, and that revenue may go down by half or more this year, given what's happened so far. And that partner, who was a key partner to the transaction, is likely now going to ask for some relief, if not entirely bail out of the project. Certain groups are following all this. Some of the major law firms out there have put out some good publication. And again, we're in the early days, but it seems to be impacting contracts already, where people are thinking about and proactively including language around sort of prolonged outage of the business, COVID and COVID mutations, how that would impact their ability to contract. So there's a lot of uncertainty that's been thrown into the mix, given what we're all dealing with, and that's something that at least we're proud to not have to deal with that. The last piece that I'll throw into the mix is everything is on balance sheet, as I mentioned, but then we're internally monetizing the tax attributes in the context of working with nonprofits. So this would be true of any developer that you work with, whether or not they have a tax equity and debt partner. If you are a nonprofit, a lot of these programs in addition to solar, have some level of accelerated depreciation, if not tax credits. And if you're a nonprofit, of course, you don't have a tax bill. If you don't have a tax bill, while when you work with someone like us, of course, we have a return, a required return over our cost of capital, but that's always offset by our ability to, for instance, in the case of solar, monetize 30% tax credits and depreciation. So it's never going to, when you're thinking about installing solar, it's never going to make sense while we have these tax subsidies in place for the university or the high school to use its own capital budget to install solar from a cost perspective versus having a third party do it. And again, that's because that third party can actually monetize those tax benefits, which will always outweigh any potential differential in cost of capital. And I will mention that our cost of capital is publicly available, is very low, sort of in the low 4% range. That cost of capital, obviously, we need to earn a return over, but I believe it's a pretty reasonable hurdle. The experience. Sadly, we don't have, I don't know how this happened, but we don't have any New Jersey projects yet with universities. We do have them with schools, but our university projects are all over the Northeast and all over the country nationally. And we're happy to provide additional detail as may be needed. You know, an important slide in general, but even more so now, is as we all sort of sort through the current state of affairs. Look, NextEra has been around for a long time. The motto at NextEra is to build and own for the long time. We don't have any disposition goals. Certain developers, you might see disposition happen several times, even prior to the solar system going operation, within a window of 2-3 years, that is. And that's just not our mandate. So when you work with us, we're lucky enough to be awarded the project. We're going to build a project, we're going to own the project, and we're going to be your long-term partner. So in order to do that successfully and not just have that happen on one project, we've realized over the years how important it is to engage the community, the key stakeholders, to make sure that folks understand what we're doing, to educate children in the community at the high school level, at the elementary level, at the college level, for sure, allow them to use this as a learning opportunity, a learning lab. I think the renewable energy resource is thankfully growing and will continue to grow. And so we've always been focused on how we can do our part to build a better future together. And of course, it's good for business too, to allow everybody to have these forums where they learn from what they're investing in. The last slides that I'll mention is, of course, we're focused on solar only, but we are market leader on the storage side. We have a significant storage backlog of projects that are going in, 8+ gigawatts. That's battery storage. And then the last slide is, this is everything that we do. I think it's everything that they are. Well, I hope it's everything that we do. Partnership capability on CHP, on resiliency and microgrids. We have our own proprietary natural gas resiliency on-site engines that provide backup power and emergency power in situations where, like, a superstorm Sandy would arise. We do energy efficiency and electric vehicles, fleet diagnostics. There's basically nothing that the company doesn't do on the energy side. Again, my purpose, given the timeline that we're dealing with and the lucrative incentives in place, is to focus on solar and the TREC program. But the point is that if you're thinking about any of these projects, it's at least worth touching base with the third-party developer community to see how our offer may look against what you all can do on your own and how you're trying to manage your capital budgets. Certain of these programs, you may well come to the conclusion that there isn't much by way of tax element, tax credit, depreciation. So maybe your payback is better than what you see coming off of ours, but it's worth the investigatory ask. This is our business. We're happy to put together a proposal on any of the above. But again, in the near term, I really urge you all to consider what facilities you have on campus, especially in the case of behind the meter projects that is on a finite timeline. And I don't know what the successor program will look like. We hear that there may be some more variability. If that's the case, then at least from our perspective, the values that we're seeing from a PPA perspective may not necessarily hold when the successor program is announced. So with that in mind, I think we're pretty much wrapped. This is my contact information, but as Wani mentioned, it sounds like we'll also have audio recording available as well as a physical copy of the presentation. I'm happy to take any and all questions.
Thank you, Sebastian. That was fabulous. Very informative, I'm sure. So I don't see any questions from folks at this time, except for one from Rohil Ferdinand, which is addressed to all of you, I think, asking whether there are any opportunities for small consultant businesses to gain access to these kinds of projects. You guys are big players. Clean energy program is a state program. Do you know of any ways in which small companies consulting firms can benefit from these programs? Amanda, Tony?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't know. Yeah, so we deal with all kinds of businesses. So, you know, it's not just universities that we partake with. You know, we do small, you know, we've done small consulting like businesses. We've done mom and pop pizza shops. We've done, you know, pretty much everything on scale that are applicable to these programs. So, yeah, there's tons of resources that we have available. So I'm definitely more than happy, Rolly, if you want to, you know, hop on a call, or, you know, Tony and I can hop on a call, or email me or Tony, whatever that looks like for you. We're more than happy to help navigate you, and just kind of get a sense of what project you're interested in, and, you know, how we can be of value to you.
Excellent. All right. So there doesn't seem to be any other question that is in the chat box or in the question and answer box. Last call, folks. If you have a question, could you put it in now? We have about 25 people still on the call. We do have about 15 minutes, 12 minutes left. If you do want to jump in with some questions at this point, now's a good time. Otherwise, what I will do is, Sebastian, Amanda, Tony, if you guys would send me your PowerPoints as PDFs, I will get them out to the participants with the recording, and that'll have all your contact information. All that information will be there, and I'm sure we'll be able to connect with you with the university community in New Jersey. Really looking forward to this. Thank you for a fabulous set of presentations, and thank you to the attendees for having stuck around. Really appreciate this. Take care, folks.
Thank you, everybody. Stay safe.
Take care. Thank you.
Yeah, be safe. That's important.
Yeah.
Take care.